Teachers of Reddit, have you had a student confess their love to you? If so, what is the story behind it? When Jay was doing my student teaching, I had this one student, 9 years old, who would refuse to talk to me. I thought the little dude hated me for one reason. One day I tried to start a conversation with him, and he started to sob and cling to my leg shouting, "Please marry me." No. But I had a weird student who went around saying I was pregnant with his child. Obviously I had not done anything with this kid other than teach him in class. But I also wasn't pregnant anyway. One of my students, who was less than half my age, told me she wanted to kiss me. She said this in a very public place, while I was chatting with her and her best friend. After she said it, I just kept jabbering away about whatever while my brain went, wait. What? In high school, there was a TA who all the boys had a crush on. One day some girls cornered her and asked her if she realized how popular she was. She replied, "I didn't even like high school boys when I was in high school." Ask the wife of the president of France. No. But I had a single mom give me a very obvious hint that she wanted to come by and help however she could during parent-teacher conference. Dunno if this counts. But when I was a senior in undergrad I made extra money by leading recitation sections for the freshman physics class. One student clearly didn't have much experience with girls, never happens in physics, and did the classic move of assuming that because I was paying attention to him and answering his questions, it meant I was romantically interested in him. This was of course announced with a ton of emails and FB messages in like 2 or 3 days. Which made it amply clear he didn't understand that me talking to him about physics and being nice was my job and I treated all students the same. I basically told my physics prof supervisor what was happening and he was a little taken aback. I can't say that's happened to me before. But he gave the kid a stern talking to. Turns out said kid had also been reported by a female classmate to the Title IX office in that first semester. So yeah. He just really didn't get how to interact with women. In a Buddhist university, where I was a teaching assistant to a Buddhist theology class, a monk in the making took a liking to me. I didn't get the cues. Just thought his friendliness and little gifts, mostly snacks, were entirely platonic. I was close to the monks at that school. The Mongolian monks gave me soda and offered me ramen when they thought the temple food was bad. So it didn't strike me as unusual. Similarly kindred spirits type of connection. Other teachers' assistants warned me, but I genuinely thought nothing of it. Turns out he really did like me. It was terribly awkward and it did not end well. Had a friend in high school who had an unhealthy crush and obsession with a female teacher. When he found out she was married, he threatened to kill himself on Facebook if she didn't go out with him. His mom and aunt tried to play it off as boys being boys, but he was forced to get medical help. I'm friend with him on Facebook and he seems to be doing well. Lives in a farm and enjoys his redneck lifestyle. Had a couple of 3rd and 4th graders teased and or outed by their classmates in front of me. The one that stood out to me was this one 4th grade. One time after class, 2 terms in, his friend suddenly went to the teacher's desk and asked me how I felt about him. He was hanging around the sides and shyly looking over. I said he was amazing and nice and I like him as a student. The crush was pretty innocent at that age, so I think he liked that answer, haha. Nothing else came up from that. Grader who was super nice in class. My 4th graders are around 10 years old and are relatively short, so they're all babies in my eyes. Not quite. But when I taught 14/15 YO students, I was 23 at the time. On one of my last days at the school. 14 and 15-year-olds away. I had a failing student who wanted to go to med school proposition me. She did get the D, but not the one she wanted. She was a minor model. Very attractive and in any other context I would have said yes. Male uni professor. It's mostly just giggling Chinese girls and people wanting selfies. They're harmless. I've been asked out a couple of times. It's easy to turn down. I'm absolutely positive that fantasy would be better than reality. I'm actually a very private person. I had a student confess her love for me yesterday even though I had just met her. She is the cutest little 5-year-old ever. Edit. Okay. Calm down everyone. I am a female teacher. And kindergartners are often very loving and sweet. We had spent the afternoon playing and reading together. And this student expressed her happiness in the best way she knew how. By telling me she loved me. Yes. Had a young man who I helped every day at lunch. He was very far behind and needed tons of extra help. After working with him from 6th grade to 8th grade he was really doing well. I was proud of him. And it showed. So by the end of middle school he says, "Thanks for all your help. You are the best mom in the world. I love you." I was a 32-year-old male. We both had a good laugh though. I was a mid-20s male who taught speech therapy at an elementary school and had a female student who was always really quiet when answering questions. Seemed shy. And would get all smiley whenever I talked to her. I was talking to the speech and language pathologist about how I thought she knew the answers. But she was too shy or acting weird or something and she goes, "Oh. It's because she has a crush on you. Dot. But she's 9. I all made sense now. But I had no idea kids got those kinds of feelings so young. The next day I was walking by and saw her with her group of friends. One of them turned to her and said, "There goes your boyfriend." Her face turned red. She hid it in her hands. And ran away. I think it's cute because kids that age don't know what those feelings are or how to handle them. But man. It blew my mind that crushes start so young. Weird. I find it hard to believe this thread is so full of honorable rejectors. In uni. Virtually every second tutor and lecturer was banging a student. All I can hear when reading these comments is "Don't stand so close to me." Yes. The girl wrote me a full-on love note. I took it immediately to my supervisor indicating my lack of knowledge of the student's interest or my interest in any way, shape or form in reciprocation. As a male in a high school I feel, the target on me is incredibly large. My super quite literally took the note, shredded it, said we would not speak of it again. I was not settled by this. I did have a talk with the student with my neighbor teacher in her room with both our doors open. It was a one conversation with the student letting her know this was not behavior I was willing to accept and would move forward in our interactions as we have in the past. Me the teacher. Her the student. Things ended up basically back to normal. This scenario was one of many issues in education that lead me to leave it. I don't want some young fool to ruin my life due to accusations and supervisors to not assist me because they don't want to deal with it or are uncomfortable themselves. Edit. While I was student teaching, it happened to be Teacher Appreciation Day and I had a female high school student tell me they loved me. Talked to my supervising teacher about it and they wrote it off as being dismissive and gave me some tips about in case they were serious. Turns out they were. The student would try to go out of their way to get help from me. Try to spend time alone with me. I was asked to help with an after-school play thing and they grouped us together and made it even more awkward. Thankful no moves were made. But it was really uncomfortable the whole time. On my going away card she wrote a sad note like, "You didn't tell me you were going away." I has a college professor who married a former student of his. They were 20-25 years apart in age and they didn't start dating until she'd been out of his class for 10 years. That's not nearly as bad then. Japanese animators. Write that down. Write that down. When I was a kid, 5 or 6, one of my dad's students came up to me and told me she wanted to be my new mommy and be married to my dad. So that was weird. I was teaching as a substitute teacher in a professional high school where most of the students were almost my age, 21-22, because most of them were refugees or just in scholar failure. The students, however, were really happy to learn English and participated a lot. So I decided to give my email in case they had questions out of class. My bad. I shouldn't have done that. After my contract ended, boy from the class kept sending me messages asking for a friendship or more. He literally spammed me for a few months until I blocked him. It is such an awkward situation. No. But about 5 years after I graduated high school, my English teacher found me and admitted that he had been madly in love with me while I was in his class. I had a slight crush on him during high school, but no clue that he dreamed of me. He had just divorced and thought it would be a fine time to test the waters. I had a student write a love note to me on a foam ball. I was teaching in China at the time and the note was in Chinese. When I gave the ball to one of the Chinese staff to translate, she, the staff member, nearly fell out of her chair laughing. The student was 14 or so. I was careful not to be alone with her. It's treated very differently over there though. Her parents once dressed her all in red, traditional Chinese wedding color, and asked me to take wedding pictures with her. I didn't refuse any picture over there so as not to be rude, but I refused those. Wait. Why would her parents do that? Are they essentially trying to give you their child? During residency I had students for various projects. Now I am generally average and never had women throwing themselves at me but never had them running away. A student, grad school, was in my office, more like a shared closet space, a lot. She was way out of my league when I was her age. Later in semester she got very close and started cluing my oblivious ass that she was into me and wanted something. I still played dumb, like she was joking. My office conveniently got turned back into storage, and I was never alone with her again. A more experienced professor later told me it was very normal that some students gravitate towards professors they admire, and they really good looking ones have to be very careful and are constantly harassed and many actually leave academia. As a student I can tell you teachers won't suck your dick after class like in PRN movies. I'm probably out of scope and definitely flipped for what you were asking. But during undergrad I asked out the TA for one of my physics labs as I turned in my final report for the semester. Just hey, let's catch a show and a beer. Lab partner encouraged me. He rejected saying he can't date students, and I just ran with it in my shame. One of my life regrets was not clarifying that I was graduating the next week. Of course I've dated since then, but it would have been nice to have a smart one for once. But it would have been nice to have a smart one for once. Oof. My dad was my mom's professor in college. A year or two after she left his class they started dating. 14 years apart and they just had their 29-year anniversary. On a more personal note, I used to teach at a boarding school and I was having a nighttime extra help session. At the end, it was this one girl who was really struggling after everyone left. She gave the whole MRX. I'd do anything to pass this class. I messaged another teacher who was downstairs to stick their head in and wrapped everything up ASAP. Sent an email to admin that night. Everything ended up fine. And I don't even know if she meant anything else by it. Wasn't going to take the chance. I used to teach at uni. Several months after the course had ended I got a long text from my former student. Turns out she had a crush on me and then saw my profile on a lesbian website. So she decided to ask me out. It was very kind of her but I said no. Deontology doesn't end with the course, haha. Plus I don't want a relationship with that kind of power dynamics. She hasn't verbally said it but she's also 7 and Chinese. I'm an expat teacher. Her English isn't good enough to verbally express it but it's pretty obvious. Though obviously harmless as well. Yes. Many times. I also work in a preschool. When they say I love you they mean it in the most platonic way possible. I also have to say I love all if my kiddos back. They are the heart and soul of my job. Yeah, I was a chemistry teacher. Her name was Jessica, I think. Not me. But a teacher at my high school left his wife and kid, he was in his mid-30s, for a girl who took a liking to him a grade under me after she graduated. She was on the volleyball team. He was the coach. Pretty much everyone knew she liked him. And it floored everyone when they announced their engagement and eloped. Rural Ohio is scary. Stay away. My first teaching practicum was in a grade 7-8 class of students who were learning English as an additional language. There were 2 boys who never spoke to me. And while they did have fairly limited English, they somehow managed to speak to other teachers just fine. On my last day, one boy told me that I was a beautiful singer and that he'd been watching my videos on Facebook. I guess he somehow creeped my very private profile and found some old videos of my performances at an open mic. For the next year, he would continue to send me messages on Facebook saying, "I miss you, Ms. B, and why don't you come visit?" I never responded. It was both sweet and concerning, lol. I wish I had a chance to teach that kid about boundaries and that playing it cool is a better approach to getting girls to like him. Related. And couldn't resist bringing it up. When I was in high school, we had a girls basketball coach who married a former player. Then divorced her after like 10 years for another former player. He then had a daughter on the team. And she would go to the trophy case and point out her mother and father in old photos where her mother was like 16 and her dad was like 40. Not a teacher but kid in my class jacked off and screamed her name. Teachers. FBI's watching. She would wait for me in the parking lot after class. I had to start using the buddy system just to get to my truck without incident. The last I heard, she's actually working in admin for my wife's company. In my last school there was a student who slept with the teacher. Word got out and the teacher was fired. IDK how he did it, cause he would never confess how SI she was or speak openly, so IDK. You've just answered your own questionnaire. That reminds me of the time I told my ex, who is a teacher, young and good looking, that there are deaf and pubescent boys in her class jerking off to the thought of her, and she absolutely lost it because she never thought of that. I was on the other end of this. I had a TA in a music theory class my junior year who was very taken with me. I was oblivious at first and just thought he was being friendly when we talked after class, which I reciprocated. Eventually he invited me over to his place to watch a movie. I was young and dumb and again just thought he was being friendly. Eventually during the movie he laid down on the couch and put his head in my lap. I promptly got up and said I had to leave. He texted me later that night asking why I left and that he missed me and always had feelings for me. I dropped that class quickly. I mean, you're in college and a guy invites you over to watch a movie. He's trying to FCK. Opposite of this. I had a university teacher come on to me. I admit when I asked questions in class I was giving her the eye. I really didn't think she'd notice it nor would act on it. Anyway. She started coming to my workspace asking if I needed assistance but would be rubbing my shoulder at the same time. This was definitely her shooting her shot. I honestly would have capitalized on the situation as she had a huge ass that I'm sure I could find some use for. I politely said nah, I'm good, as I noticed when she was close to me she had this strange odor. It totally threw off my fantasies I had created in my head. This sub's questions are getting out of control. Thank God I'm repulsive. Also basically at this point being with someone who is a young adult turns my stomach. I hate that mindset. Some of us went through more hell in our teen years than some people do in 50 years of life. Someone being young does not mean they haven't been through life's hardships already. No. In college I had a female TA whisper in my ear, "If you go on a date with me, I'll give you an A." Does that count? It's the exact opposite scenario of what this question was asking for, so no. I'm sure my mum said that I wanted to marry my nursery teacher when I was like 3. I do remember loving her. I confessed my love for my teacher when I was in high school. I even proposed to her in front of the class with a ring pop. This is giving me flashbacks of 5 months ago. It was a week before Teachers' Day and the student council decided that all students should write appreciation letters to our teachers. Well, our teacher was young, prob mid-20s, and she was sick and took leave for a week previously. I proceeded to write down something like, "We were worried about your health and were glad when you came back." It sounded too wrong. Honestly, that's sweet. I teach middle school and had a student in the middle of class say, "You know, so and so has a crush on you." I honestly didn't even hear who she said. Anyways, I just said gross and moved on. That must have been heartbreaking. Teach that kid about rejection young.